Hello, Tim. We'll wait a minute or two for our audience to join us. Welcome to the Persecution Report. Bangladesh is preparing for a national election in February 2026. Official reports describe this as a return to democratic governance. However, Bangladesh Awami League, the most significant political party in Bangladesh's history and historically representing the largest share of the electorate, has been barred from participating. An election that excludes a major segment of voters is not fully democratic. Participation, competition, and voter choice are the founding elements of any credible elections. When these elements are removed, the legitimacy of the process is undermined. Bangladesh Awami League has called the nation for an election boycott. Today, we scrutinize, can election that exclude the majority over the considered can be considered democratic? Joining me today, co-host Anwar Sadat Jihan, an aeronautical engineer and political commentator, Dr. Bidit, professor of marketing, barrister, Tapas Kanti Baul, a lawyer. First question to Professor Bidit. Is an election without the country's largest political party still a democratic exercise?
Thanks, Mr. Alam. And the straight answer to your question is no. But also, we have to look at the historical background. We have to see that why and how Awami League has been barred from doing active politics, and also leading to their leading to an order to prevent them from taking part in the election. So if we go back 1.5 years, or actually even 10, 12 years ago, I'm sure many people would remember the Shahbag movement, Shahbag uprising back in 2013. And since then, this particular narrative was gradually taken over by the anti-liberation force in Bangladesh. What we mean by anti-liberation force is basically the right-wing political activists and commentators. So they created a narrative called fascist, and they continued to attribute Awami League leadership and the party as fascist. Now, it remains to be seen, and it has to be disputed and contested, that why would Awami League be called fascist? We have seen what's happening in Syria. We have seen Tiananmen Square massacre. Currently, we are seeing uprising in Iran. If these three incidents could be put together, does any of these regimes can be called, or is any of these regimes called fascist? No. If we look at Egypt in 2014, the then Morsi government was toppled by the military dictator, or not military dictator, military ruler, I correct myself, Sisi. And during that time, it is estimated that between 600 to 2,000 people were killed. Do we call Sisi, the current head of state of Egypt, a fascist? No. Then why do they call or they wanted to attribute Awami League as fascist. This is part of their plan, which they hatched long back. And the target objective of the plan was to eliminate Awami League from politics altogether, and to marginalize its supporters, and also to obliterate anything that Awami League stands for from Bangladesh politics. So this is where I find a sort of a way to analyze the current electoral situation, so that these people could claim that Awami League is a fascist party, and therefore rationalize elimination of Awami League. And if you ask anyone, I mean, my colleagues, you are based in Europe and North America. Through you, I would ask our international listeners, as well as Bangladeshi diaspora who live in various parts of the world. You speak to any European friend of yours and tell them that this is what fascist is, they would be laughing at you. By no means Awami League can be attributed or can be called as fascist. There are very strong academic definitions of fascism or fascist regime. By no means Awami League can be classified under those categories. So now,
Dr. Day, would you be able to give us the historical perspective of the electorate in Bangladesh?
I'm coming to the Now, why are they doing that? Why are they calling Awami League fascist? Is because they are insecure about Awami League's politics and popularity. They know that Awami League stands for a significant part of the electoral support, which historically you can see on the slide from 1991 till 2008, when we had a number of internationally credible elections, even the election which actually Awami League couldn't win, couldn't form a government. They secured in 2001 40.1% votes. And that is the scenario in Bangladesh. For the last 16 years, we have again seen that Bangladesh Awami League's popularity or their public support were hovering between 40 to 50%, 60%, because there was one or two elections where the opposition didn't take part. That might have skewed the popularity more towards Awami League. But the fact of the matter is that there is always a significant part of the popular support in favor of Awami League party. Now, coming back to the point from a more nuanced understanding of Bangladeshi politics, particularly for those who are our international audience, in Bangladesh, we have got a range of different political parties depending on their ideological positioning within the political spectrum. Just the slide that showed that we have got extreme right-wing group in the form of Islamist parties, and we have got extreme left-wing form groups, the likes of Communist Party and some other left-leaning political entities. But what we see is that in the center ground is occupied between BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, and Bangladesh Awami League, while BNP leans towards more sort of center-right part of the political spectrum. Bangladesh Awami League has its position rooted in center-left. And being in the center-left position, they have been unparalleled. There is no other party which is as popular as Awami League, who can be attributed, who can be classified as in the European context, we can term them as more of social democrat, liberalist, because their support for secularism, because their support for social justice and socialism, while at the same time upholding Bengali nationalism. We can see that they have a strong, visible, and palpable commitment towards social democracy. And now you imagine in Germany, if there was no SDP, in the UK, if there was no the Labour Party, in the US, if there was no Democrat Party, then how would that political position, how would that political electorate would respond who are in support of those ideologies? So in effect, the 12th February so-called sham election is going to be held without giving a wide range of options to our population. So the
So
electorate
it
will
is, it is an election between, Dr. Day, this is an election, the February 26th election is between center-right and hard-right. BNP, the
absolutely
center-right, and Jamaat-e-Islam and the Islamic Party, the hard-right
hard right.
parties, where, as far we know, in Bangladesh's electorate, if we analyze that Jamaat-e-Islam has something between 4 to 5% of total vote share, and BNP has 30 to 35% of vote share, and altogether they're 39, 40% of votes share. So 40% of people, electorate, are doing the election, and rest they have no part in this election. Is that right?
On Absolutely. And to add to that discussion, Mr. Alam, we also have to recognize that electoral practice is not just about share of the vote. Electoral practice is about finding out ways to govern a country, about debates about national issues, discussion about who can have a clear plan for the future. So now what we see is that because there is no as such party who can talk about public support, public spending, who can talk about secularization of the society, who would talk about Bengali nationalism, which again reflects our secular identity. So we are going to have an incomplete debate in the run up to this election. And we are going to have a completely bemused and baffled electorate who wouldn't know what the other options could be. Because Jamaat-e-Islami being hard right and BNP being center right, they wouldn't be throwing their support for some of the critical government decisions which may characterize what Bangladesh should be. And that particular debate will be incomplete without Awami League's participation in the election. So we are seeing that there is a way of monopolizing not only the results, but also monopolizing the idea upon which the country will be built and run in the coming years. And that is so unfortunate, and that is so much unfair, and that cannot be called democracy.
What we learn from Dr. Day is that in any democracy, in any country, whether it be Bangladesh or a country in North America or in Europe or in Asia, there are two segments of voters, the electorate. One is center left and one is center right. And then you will have a few people, a few percentage of people are supporting the hard right fractions, such as hard left, uh, like extreme left or extreme right. In Bangladesh's case, the extreme left is not there. As far as I could remember, their share of electorate is 0.6%, less than 1%. And then Jamaat Islam and Islamic parties also in Bangladesh's context, their vote share is very minimal, which is 4 to 5% between that. So any country, if we look at, let's say we go to UK, in the UK we have Tories, the right-wing centre, then you have the Labour Party, left-wing centre. In Australia, you have Labour Party, Australian Labour Party, left-wing, centre-left, and we have Australian Liberal Party, which is centre-right. Same in the United States. We have the Republican center-right and the Democrat center-left. In this, and Bangladesh is no difference. In Bangladesh, Bangladesh Awami League represent the center-left, and the biggest portion of the electoral share, which is 48.6%, 49%, we could say. It is based, our analysis is based on 2008 election, which is recognized as free and fair by international community and the entire world. And this 49% voters have no say, no choice in this election. This is an election between center right and extreme right, where center right has the bigger chance. I mean, this election is already decided before the election, because everyone knows that Jamaat Islam has no chance in this election, and there is no possibility that a center left voter, a Awami League voter, would vote for an extreme right party. It is impossible. And also, we must recognize that in Bangladesh's political landscape, center right BNP and center left Awami League is embedded. So, in this election, this election does, it's a sham election, an election where minority of the voters decides that majority of the voters cannot vote, cannot have a choice. Barrister Tapas Kanti Baul, how does collective political exclusion differ from accountability through law? You're muted, Barrister
Thank
Baul.
you for the question. Uh, but I differ with the word collective. Rather, I would say that it is targeted and subjective. Why I'm saying that it is targeted and subjective? Because there is no way we can consider this election, the upcoming election, as free, fair, and inclusive. Let us talk about the international standards that has been proposed by Inter-Parliamentary Union, International IDEA, and OSCE and UNDP. There are few standards that it must be followed: universal, equal, and sacred suffrage. It has to be like all eligible citizens can vote without discrimination and vote privately. So, are we seeing that? You just mentioned about the religious minorities. Are we seeing that they can vote without discrimination? No. And can they vote privately? Also, no, because right now they are taking away the choice of the voters by inflicting fear. There is no equality of opportunity. For example, Awami League is not is contesting in this election. So is Workers' Party. So is Jashod. So all parties and candidates cannot register, campaign, and reach voters on a level playing field. And also, within the political parties that are contesting the election, for example, Jatiyo Party, they don't have a level playing field because they cannot reach their voters. We know that Jatiyo Party has a strong base in the northern region of Bangladesh. And in the present situation, I have been informed that they cannot reach their voters, they cannot campaign freely and fairly. Whether the administration is transparent, if we see that already BNP is saying that Jamaat owns the administration, whereas Jamaat is saying that the BNP is owning the administration. And that doesn't mean that administration is neutral, because administration is tightly owned by Jamaat Islami and those who are anti-liberation, anti-secularism, anti-secular forces. They are controlling the administration. That's why you will see that wherever there is kind of secular forces trying to deny that this election is free and fair, there those voices are getting suppressed. Now, look into the next question about freedom of expression and assembly. Is there any freedom of expression in Bangladesh right now? There is no freedom of expression. Can you say that I will put no in the referendum? You cannot say that. Is there freedom of assembly in Bangladesh? No, there is no freedom of assembly in Bangladesh. The moment you say Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu, you are getting arrested. Even you don't say it publicly, you say it online, you will get arrested. So there is no freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. This is not only true for the Awami League supporters, this is also true for religious minority activists, secular activists. Shahriar Kabir is in the prison. Chinmoy Prabhu is in the prison. Dipu Dash is killed. So there is, and every, like, last 9 days, there are minimum 7 Hindu young person was killed, and we don't know what is the situation in the hill tracts of Bangladesh because it is highly suppressed over there. So when I say that there is no
Also, not to mention that, Pastor Paul, that
right,
even Awami League is barred from the election. It's not just that. Awami League supporters have been arrested.
right,
Just supporters. It doesn't have to be Awami League leaders or party activists. Those who were supporting Awami League with their votes, none, they are even arrested these days.
absolutely. And there is you are killing people in the prison, right? All we know that through negligence treatment, through torture and everything, you are killing Awami League leaders and activists in the prison. And one of the main reason why I'm saying that this is a botched up election, because it lacks inclusivity. Participation encompasses all demographic groups, right? There should have been women. How many women are participating in this election? Do you know? We don't. How many members of minority community are participating? How are
Barrister
rural and
Paul,
urban?
just
Yes.
just to add to that, BNP being the largest party in Bangladesh, to my understanding, knowledge, they have got only 12, and that included former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia, and with her passing away, that number has gone down further. And they have got only 5 members from religious and ethnic minority communities. So that's what they are calling inclusivity. Out of 300 seats, only 12 women and 5 religious and ethnic minority. So, and we're not even talking about Jamaat-e-Islami, who has got only one Hindu candidate and no women candidate, because Jamaat-e-Islami does not believe in women leadership.
And also, I have to say that how many of these candidates are farmers? How many candidates are coming from, labor trade unions? So this is a huge, this is a huge election where inclusiveness is absent, because voting logistics and civic education is lacking. Government is spending money for yes vote. They have no other target. They have just one sole target. So definitely this is not a democratic election when the government itself is promoting yes vote, government itself paying people to vote yes. Then definitely this is not a free and fair election. We can say that the election in Bangladesh will be free and fair when it meets these conditions that I have mentioned, when all major parties, including Awami League, participates. Then the voters can freely participate without fear. Voters can engage in the process without restriction, and independent oversight ensures transparency and inclusivity, and there is freedom of expression and assembly. Only then we can say that it is free and fair. Now, why we are saying that if Awami League is not allowed to participate, the election cannot be free and fair and participatory, right? The first thing is that there is deprivation of voters' choice. Excluding a major party like the Awami League removes thousands, even millions of voters' ability to choose based on their preferred political vision, undermining electoral inclusiveness. Distorted mandate is also there. Without participation from a major stakeholders, results can't claim representativeness or legitimacy. The electoral mandate lacks robustness. Then, major party absence eliminates critical scrutiny and competition, leading to a skewed, non-competitive environment. Bangladesh's party system relies on pluralism, right? Sidelining the Awami League replicates patterns reminiscent of one-party dominance, undermining core democratic values. In essence, excluding an essential political player like the Awami League from the ballot renders the election neither participatory nor legitimate. I would like to take another 2 minutes just to say that why this referendum is illegal in Bangladesh. It is a problematic uh, step towards creating a haphazard Bangladesh. First of all, this referendum or Ganobhot does not have any constitutional basis. The Bangladesh constitution doesn't explicitly authorize referendums. Though Article 7 vesting sovereignty in the people is cited in discursive arguments, this isn't legal foundation. Previously, referendum took place in 1977 and 1985. We have seen that in 1977 and 1985, under authoritarian regime, those referendums were illegitimate to legitimizing rulers, and they were not as used as a democratic tool. Without clear constitutional procedures, referendum lack legitimacy and are vulnerable to abuse, especially when combined with elections. Such an approach threatens checks and balances, accountability, and could erode democratic norms. Using referendum to impose constitutional changes circumvents parliamentary supremacy, supermajority or supremacy, which is the iconic article of Bangladesh Constitution, Article 142, and undermines representative mechanisms. Thus, I can say that referendum in this context are constitutionally unauthorized and pose a danger to Bangladesh's democratic and legal framework.
Barrister Paul, would you spoke about Bangladesh's constitutional provisions. Do you or Dr. Day has any example from outside Bangladesh?
I will just give you a ready-made example. Look at Nepal, right? Nepal also had a similar kind of uprising. But what happened in Nepal? That in Nepal, there was like in 2006, I will give you 2006 as example and the recent example. In 2006, there was this peace agreement, introduction to mainstream politics, and then a constitution assembly was there. And presently, what happened in the present situation, after this September color revolution in Nepal, they just what the president did. President appointed their Justice Kharki, who was the chief justice. I think the only female chief justice so far in South Asia. So when she was appointed as appointed as the interim prime minister, look at the term. The term is prime minister, not interim chief advisor or something. And she has been given one single mandate to hold an election in March. And after coming into taking up her responsibilities, she organized this inquiry commission where the all the political parties, including the prime minister, the former prime minister Oli and his home minister, they testified. And the functioning of the inquiry committee is to see that whether the police at that time used excessive force or not, whether the decisions of the executive was excessive or not. This is the duty, and they do not have any authority to impose any punishment on the political leaders. So what they will do, they will suggest, they will probably say to apologize to certain people if there is any evidence of excessive force from on part of any political leader, any on part of any police officers or army officers. Then they will suggest those names for for trial, but nothing more than that. In the upcoming election, Nepali Congress is participating under Oli, and the young generation, they have formed a separate political party that is also participating. Justice Kharki, as the interim prime minister, she is ensuring level playing field in Nepal. So everybody gets the equal face time on television, equal attention on the newspaper and everything. She did not impose any restriction on Nepali newspaper and media. So freedom of expression and freedom of assembly is there. Nepal has their minority commission, and they have commission for each and every sector or every.
Thank you, Barrister Bowl. Thank you, Dr. Day. Do you believe the current regime under Yunus, the fear Awami League, is that if Awami League is allowed to vote, that Awami League will win?
Yes, before that, I'll just come back to that referendum point. Perhaps our Bangladeshi listeners would know, but also just to remind them that referendum is meant to be for a binary issue. It's yes or no. And when the question is pretty straightforward, I live in a country which actually went through a referendum, although that was a disaster for the nation, the Brexit referendum, you all know, 2016. But the question was pretty clear. Would you like to come out of the European Union or not? But what we see now with this particular referendum, where there was a very farcical sham constitutional reform commission, which was, God knows how they picked up the people to lead that. And someone named Professor Ali Riaz, who is not a constitution expert, led the commission. And then they came up with a range of suggestions to reform the constitution. And that particular commission encompassed or also was participated by around 30 political parties. But if you exclude BNP and Jamaat, you could hardly find a party with popular support. So essentially, there were many parties, perhaps 27, 28 of those parties, who have got very microscopic minority support. But because they were considered as single entity separately, So they could put pressure on the bigger parties such as BNP to cave into their demands. And that's how the government actually pressurized BNP to agree on many of these suggested changes. And now those have been put together. So effectively, either you support all these 27 provisions or 30 provisions, whatever the number of provisions are there, or you do not support any of those. So there is no way you can say that, okay, I like these 10, but I do not like these 17 or 15, or I can go for these 5, but the rest are not to my liking. So that is not happening. So essentially, you are taking the whole population to ransom and asking them, putting pressure on them to like the whole package of those constitutional reforms, and that cannot be a referendum. That is unprecedented in anywhere in the world. Right. So that's why I would add to what Barrister Baul has said, and I think that this is going to be a complete mockery of referendum or any form of whatever they call it. Now, coming back to your point, is whether or not Awami League supports. So what will happen to these 45% voters? And problem is that it's those voters who are left with no options. It's those voters whose opinions are not reflected. They may have certain political ideology. So when we look at the support or allegiance to a political party, that can happen because of ideology, that can happen because of certain political agenda, manifesto, that can happen because people may want an alternative, that can happen because people may have some historical attachment with them. So what is happening with these 40% supporters of Awami League? None. And these population are not having their opinions reflected on the agenda of BNP and Jamaat. Because as we see that Jamaat and BNP have a complete different political narrative, where there are fundamental differences. And also we know that BNP and Jamaat have got the history of corruption, history of terrorism, history of militancy, history of poking international security. And now we are seeing that the group that ruled the country between 2000 and 2006, which is one of the darkest period in the country's history, would be back.
If I am here to, if I could, in one sentence, explain the political ideology of BNP and Jamaat Islami, it would be Jamaat Islami is an Islamist force. Political Islam is their product. And BNP is the political party that appease the Islamists.
Yes, so BNP is more sort of a refined version, but BNP's politics is also rooted in communalism. BNP's politics was fueled during the era of neoliberalism, during Reagan and Thatcher in 80s. Right, so BNP's politics is nowhere towards the left, and BNP has always been supportive of a free market economy. Right, so there is, we know during 1994, farmers were shot dead by the then BNP government when they cried out for fertilizers. Reasonable price for fertilizer supply and a price for fertilizers, which eventually was ensured by the following Awami League government by providing huge subsidies in that sector. So that one instance can classify the economic orientation of two parties. One party is all about exploiting poor, where the other party is more towards subsidizing agricultural sectors and providing government support for agricultural and subsistence activities. So therefore, I would say that
social safety network.
Yeah.
Awami League is known for building the social safety network for the people who are underprivileged. And the BNP is the party, like all right-wing party, they will snatch away to whatever they could from the privileged.
Yeah.
Again, you probably have some slides to show us.
Thank you, Mr. Alam. Bangladesh Awami League is calling for a nationwide election boycott. To understand under what circumstances Bangladesh Awami League is doing it, to understand under what circumstances Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, the biggest proponent of democracy in Bangladesh, is doing it, we have to take a look at the overall situation of Bangladesh today. When we do that, it will appear as if it is an exact scene from George Orwell's fiction 1984. Bangladesh is George Orwell's Oceania, and Yunus is the big brother himself. There is nothing called truth. Just like the Ministry of Truth of Oceania, Yunus and his unconstitutional regime are trying to erase all the truths about Bangladesh and establish a false narrative about the largest political party of Bangladesh. I don't call Bangladesh Awami League the largest political party just for the sake of saying it. Historical data supports this claim. When we take a look at the parliamentary elections data from 1991 to 2024, we will see that Bangladesh Awami League received consistently more than 35 to 40% votes. In 1991, it was 30%. In 1996, it became 37%. In 2001, in the election that Bangladesh Awami League lost, even in the election that Bangladesh Awami League lost, it received 40% of the votes. And in 2008, in the recent election that was recognized as the most free, fair, and credible by different world bodies, Awami League received 48% of the popular vote. So what does all this data tell us? It tells us that the popularity of Bangladesh Awami League has been rising consistently. In this world, you can exclude 48% of the electorate base and call it a democracy. This is no democracy. This unconstitutional regime is resorting to all sorts of tools, from abusing the judiciary to mobs, to crack down on Awami League. From the data from last September, we see that 5,079 Awami League leaders were charged and are in jail. By now, this number may be in the tens of thousands. When we look at the recent request of Awami League to the International Criminal Court, we will see that more than 400 Awami League activists were murdered by mob and by other means. And then they are resorting to custodial killing, extrajudicial killing. More than hundreds of Awami League activists were killed in prison while deprived of their liberty. This is no democracy at all. It is completely unacceptable. It is unacceptable not only to the national communities, it is also unacceptable to the international communities as well. And we have started to see some of the international bodies waking up. For example, in recent days, some ranking members of the US Foreign Affairs Committee have urged Yunus about the importance of inclusive election. They have raised their concern about the elimination of a political party and barring of political activities of that political party. Only one international body, but we all know that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So other international bodies also need to wake up and pressurize this unconstitutional regime to cancel this sham election and work towards arranging an inclusive election. Because we believe from the core of our heart, when the election is inclusive, Bangladesh Awami League will shine. Bangladesh Awami League will shine because Bangladesh Awami League still carries the highest support of the people of Bangladesh. It is high time that all the international communities wake up. Back to you, Mr. Alam. You're muted.
although we are taking 2008 election as our benchmark. However, in 2018 election, Bangladesh Awami League received 77% of the votes. Many may disagree with the electoral process of 2018. However, let's not forget what Awami League has done for this country. In 2008, when Awami League took over the country, Bangladesh had 27% poverty rate. Today it is 18%. When Bangladesh Awami League left the power in 2024, we had 18-19% extreme poverty, which was reduced to 5%, which is international standard. In any country, even in a very developed country, you will see 5% people living under the poverty line. Bangladesh Awami League developed the infrastructure of Bangladesh, like to first world standard. And Bangladesh emerged under its leadership as rising tiger of Asia. So it is not imaginary or political propaganda that Bangladesh Awami League's vote share or popularity increased. It is very normal because, as we know, in politics, and especially electoral politics, the political party who does better for the country, who does better for the people, gets a bigger vote share. This is fundamental of politics. And this is what they fear. That if Bangladesh Awami League is given a chance, with not even a free or fair election, any type of election, if Bangladesh Awami League is there, Bangladesh Awami League is going to win that election. Without any doubt. And this is what's exactly happening here. And Barrister Baul, the legitimacy, legal legitimacy of this election. I mean, does barring a party before education affect the rule of law? You're muted. You are muted, Barrister Baul.
Yeah. Sorry. What I wanted to say is that the most disturbing thing that has happened in Bangladesh is that you know that a European election observer team is visiting Bangladesh, right? And they have said that they have changed the definition of inclusiveness. With respect to the European Union election observation mission, I must strongly disagree with the way inclusive and participatory has been framed in Dhaka, defining inclusivity primarily as the presence of social groups, women, ethnic and religious minorities, and measuring participation largely through voter turnout ignores the cornerstone of democratic elections, genuine multi-party competition. That narrow lens is inconsistent with international standards. First, the OSCE and ODIHR Election Observation Handbook and the Copenhagen Commitments make it plain. Democratic election must be universal, equal, free, fair, secret, transparent, and accountable. And they require genuine competition among political parties and candidates. Inclusivity is not just about who shows up at the polls. It is about whether all legitimate parties can compete on an equal footing, campaign freely, and access media and remedies. Without that, the ballot is reduced to a ritual, not a choice. So here we can see that Awami League is banned from election. Their political leaders and activists are thrown in the jail. There is no freedom of access, freedom of association. Secondly, why this mission is wrong, that the mission's public explanation stating that inclusivity means involvement of social groups and that participation will be assessed by credible turnout sidesteps these wordings, right? That the participation will be assessed by credible turnout. It sidesteps the central question Bangladesh faces today. Have all major political actors been allowed to compete fairly? The answer is no. If a major party like Awami League is excluded, or if registration campaigning, and access to dispute resolution are not equitable, then high turnout cannot sanitize an election's democratic deficit. Thirdly, respected global benchmarks, including the Inter-Parliamentary Union's Declaration on Criteria for Free and Fair Elections and International IDEA's guidelines, explicitly emphasizes equal opportunity to become a candidate, to campaign, and to present political views, and the presence of an impartial administration to guarantee those rights. In other words, party participation and competition are non-negotiable for an election to be free, fair, and inclusive. However, he totally overlooked it. In Bangladesh's context, reducing inclusivity to demographics and turnout depoliticizes a fundamentally political standard and risks legitimizing an uncompetitive process. Elections are about choices among competing visions. If those choices are constrained by exclusion, formal or informal, the process violates the various standards the European Union and OSCE claim to uphold. Bottom line, this statement of the European mission is, I cannot agree with it, and I strongly disagree.
Do you think the European Union has a double standard here?
Definitely, they are using a double standard. They are maintaining one standard, as I said, the Copenhagen commitment, the OSCE commitment and handbooks, they are the European standard. And while going to Bangladesh, they have all of a sudden forgotten about all these standards. What is this?
What could be the reason?
I strongly believe that there could be some meticulous mechanism of Dr. Yunus that has made him change his position after landing in Bangladesh. You know that already UN has denied to send the election monitoring mission in Bangladesh. Then why all on a sudden European Union mission is there in Bangladesh? And also a person who is actually representing a very
you believe that the European Union also has a deep state?
Definitely they have, and they are right now, they are following the footsteps of whom. Whatever, I mean, Trump says or USA says, they are just blindly following those footsteps.
But Donald Trump is not saying anything here.
Not about this, but the way. I'm not going to open this Pandora's box of discussion. But
just I would like to add one point here, that since I don't want to point my finger to anybody, but maybe the listeners can find a correlation between the change of European Union and the US position since the Russia-Ukraine war, and what happened in Bangladesh and what is happening now, that may have some connection with that there has been a realignment of the global political and geopolitical strategies and geopolitical positions since the Russia-Ukraine war.
Right. So, but what I'm going to say is another thing, that these election monitoring mission of European Union, they have even ignored the call from Pope himself. Just yesterday, Pope issued this statement that minorities in Bangladesh are not living a secured life. They are in fear. How come this person from European Union, he can deny this fact, and he just ignored that statement from Pope or every single body from international organizations who are saying that minorities in Bangladesh are not safe, that freedom of expression is zero in Bangladesh, and there is no freedom of association in Bangladesh. Without addressing this situation, how come he can make this change in the definition? He is just, I would say that he is just another puppet.
Dr. Day, what message does this exclusion send to voters, the people?
I mean, I would echo what Barrister Baul.
We are playing with the rights of the people, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an example that what can happen if there is no participation of all political parties. We have been seeing in the student union elections in all major universities in the last few months. And you can see that Jamaat is clean sweeping all of these elections. Why is that happening? It's happening because the electorate does not have too many options. And it is when these are very muddled, when there aren't too many political ideologies and manifestos to choose from, then there is always a risk of rise of populism. There is always a risk of rise of extremism. And that's what I would like to remind all the international communities, that what you are doing or what you are ignoring, what you are not doing for Bangladesh can lead to rise of extremism, and which we can already see. We can see that the Islamists have already gained a lot of spaces within the country. They have been allowed to exercise their power. They have been allowed to exercise their street power right now, and that can soon become their constitutional power when they will take positions in the parliament. And there is a chance, there is a realistic risk that Bangladesh will drift further towards extremism, which can jeopardize not only Bangladesh's future, but also the regional and global security. And that's why, yeah.
I have another question. Like, we know European Union. I live in Europe. You live in Europe too. And we know that European government and European politics, European democracy politics is, even Dr. Barrister Baul, he's living in Europe now, that morally standard, morality and ethics, it matters in European politics. It really does, at least when we inside Europe. So with the Bangladesh election, the role European Union is playing, what message it is sending to its own people, the Europeans, Europe. Let's say if some European people becomes interested in Bangladesh's election, what is the message European Union sending to them?
It's quite disappointing. I fully agree with you that both the European Union and the UK, unlike the US, uphold certain values and moral standards which are severely, which are not properly followed in their current exercise or engagement with Bangladeshi politics, as we see that the UK High Commissioner in Bangladesh has been having repetitive meetings with Jamaat-e-Islami and legitimizing them, supporting them, which again is very disappointing. So it sends out a paradoxical message to the population at large, and also the policymakers within the European Union as well as the UK, that at one side we are talking about pluralism, we are talking about human rights, we're talking about inclusivity, and these are the strong pillars, the cornerstones of liberal European democracies in this continent, which actually make the continent so peaceful and so democratic. But they are not siding, they are not showing sincere intent to upholding these values when they are engaging and interacting in Bangladesh. And that's where I feel that it goes far beyond what we see in our naked eyes. There must be some deep issues, geopolitical interests of these countries and these commissions, which are underpinning their actions in Bangladesh.
I mean, it is even a child would understand because of this background and the involvement of extremist, religious extremist and hard right element in this election, who would be empowered by this election. This election would be empowering hard right Islamic extremist outfits. And European Union would definitely have this data. They will have this analysis because they spend massive amount of taxpayers' money for this analytics. But and still knowing that this could mean a rise of extremism in one part of the world, which is vulnerable and important to the world, because in this part of the world, this is This is like 2.4 billion people: India, China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal. Three nuclear power here. This could destabilize the world.
And also because Bangladesh receives a lot of funding from the European Union, that's taxpayers' money, and those funding, those support, those assistant programs should be properly appropriated in Bangladesh. If there was a corrupt government that we saw between 2000 and 2006, if there was an extremist government that we saw during the same time, we do not see any possibility of any European supported development program will be properly undertaken and will make good to the wider population. So this is also for their own interest, for their own accountability. The European Union, I feel that, have really let them down, and they haven't done their what they are accountable to do so.
Many might argue that they are doing it for political stability. Barrister Baul, do you think it can be sustainable stability when 49% of the total electorate is barred from voting, from having a choice?
Absolutely right, Jay, that they cannot sustain this election. This Yunus and Jamaat and other political parties, including BNP, has forgotten one thing, that the present generation, they want to have someone in power who can actually deliver, who can deliver major projects like Padma Setu, who can deliver metro rail, who can create employment, who can sustain farmers and workers. So they have seen in the last 15, 16 years that who has done it, who has delivered it, right? None other than Sheikh Hasina. And who and like BNP was in power 3 times. Did they deliver anything other than giving the birth of Jamaat Islami? I don't think so. So if this new generation of voters, they look into if they embrace the ideology of anti-Awami League, if they embrace the ideology of anti-secularism, then I don't know which way Bangladesh is going after through this election.
I
But
mean, this is beyond comprehension, isn't it? Like in Egypt, they're supporting a military dictator because they believe that Islamic Brotherhood is the worst option. But in case of Bangladesh, there's no problem supporting Jamaat Islami. Now, what's the difference between Jamaat Islami and Islamic Brotherhood? What is the difference? Is there
right.
any?
Absolutely, yeah. Barrister, do you want to take this question or?
No, please go ahead. I don't. I
No,
think
absolutely. And these bystanders, these double standards, not even double, the multiple standards, right, which are perplexing and baffling to us. And they don't recognize the fact that Bangladesh is in a hotbed. We are in a close geographic proximity with the likes of China. Myanmar is already in a complete chaos. We are neighboring India. And also this region has got a history of nuclear warfare, and not nuclear warfare, but two nuclear powered nations in loggerhead with each other. So at this point, if there was meant to be any stability, there has to be a functional democracy in Bangladesh, which can only be ensured by inclusive participatory election where all parties will be taking part. There will not be any disenfranchisement of any part of the population. There will be upholding of the rights of minority population, women, and also the extremist forces will be kept at bay. And that is what the priority should be.
I will
Best of
add.
all, I have a very different question for you. Let's not go there. That is, you come from the minority religious sect, and how would the minority feel when Jamaat Islami is empowered in Bangladesh, empowered by the government, empowered by the foreign elements? how would the minority feel?
Since 5th of August, the minority people have seen the true face of Jamaati Islami. The
I
young
mean, this
generation of
organization, just 1 minute, this organization has a proven record of carrying out the genocide against people, especially against the minority people. They carried out the genocide, legitimizing it, saying these are the Indians, these are Hindus. That's how
this
they
is
did it.
this is the reason why Jamaat Islami never got any potential amount of vote in any of the elections, right? So apart from that, as I said, that religious minorities and ethnic minorities are living in fear in Bangladesh. Just 2 days ago, right? The Jamaat Islami, they were declaring in Puran Dhaka, in the old Dhaka, that there will be no Shakrine culture. There will be no cultural program to using microphone, using big, where young people will enjoy the Bangladeshi culture. They cannot do it. So they have seen the face of Jamaat Islami. I have to, through this program, I have to tell the young generation that what kind of challenges they are facing. USA has already provided an embargo on visas. They did not provide it on a student visa, but they have provided it on business and tourist visa. But the student visa is also shrinking because the Trump authority, whenever they are getting a whim of any right wing students, they are sending them home, right? So if a Bangladeshi student goes to study in the USA or in the UK, the moment their Facebook will reveal that they are a right wing political activist, they are doing Jamaati Islami, they are doing Hizbut Tahrir. So their visa will either be cancelled at the initial stage or they will be sent back home. Look,
So,
not
Barrister Paul, here is another double standard. In Bangladesh, they have no problem to support and to sit down with Jamaat Islami, but when it comes to visas to their own hemisphere, that's an issue.
We also have
What
received
is
news,
wrong?
although it hasn't been formally verified, but in many Bangladeshi news outlets that on multiple 10 to 15 UK universities have actually decided not to recruit students from Bangladesh. So I would like to echo Barrister Baul here that
Mhm. Please.
Okay, our
yeah,
time is limited. I know it's a vast discussion, and we will
yeah.
be discussing this issue in our coming episodes. But for today, we'll have to finish. We already exceeded our time, and democracy erodes gradually through decisions that appear temporary, through justification that seems reasonable, and through silence that treats as neutrality. When citizens are effectively excluded from participation, the consequences extend beyond a single election. It affects societal trust, institutional legitimacy, and regional stability. Elections should resolve political conflict, not suppress it. I repeat, elections should resolve political conflict, not suppress it. When choices is removed, democracy is not defended, it is denied. And this is why Bangladesh Awami League is calling for a nationwide boycott of this illegitimate, undemocratic election, an election that will empower the bad elements of the society and put Bangladesh at risk. This concludes today's episode of the Persecution Report. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week, same time, same day, same channels. Thank you very much.